Good afternoon. This hearing is called to order. This is the public hearing of the City Council Committee on Labor and Civil Service, and the purpose of this public hearing is to hear testimony on Bill number 160713. I recognize the presence of a quorum of committee members. Members of the committee are in attendance: Councilman Dom Green, Councilwoman Gim, and Councilwoman Sanchez, along with Parker. We also have our Committee on Labor and Civil Service Vice Chair here with us, Councilman ONeill. Vice Chair ONeill, thank you so very much for being here. Let me now ask Vice Chair ONeill and or Councilwoman Gim if they would like to make any remarks before I make some remarks, and then we get started with our testimony.
I know you're running late, so I'll let it get started and give it to my freshman colleague, because probably has a lot to say since she's been a little bit a part of this bill, I understand.
Councilwoman Gim.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you everybody who came out today to talk about an important issue in the city, and that has to deal with how we tackle issues of poverty and rising income inequality in Philadelphia. A few weeks ago, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, there was a census report that indicated that Philadelphia's median incomes were on the rise. And many people have a lot to celebrate with that. That is absolutely true. But one of the indicators that happened also showed that the overwhelming amount of increase in the median income had to do with the fact that incomes over $100,000 had gone up significantly, but that wages at the base were stagnating. And one of the things that we have to think about as a city, especially in a city like Philadelphia, the poorest large city in the country, and especially for our residents, is that for too often we've seen too little increase in wealth. This bill, which works to expand prevailing wage for a number of institutions and large entities, is seeking to address this issue of how we combat dramatic inequality in income between the haves and have-nots. An existing law guarantees prevailing wage to building service employees working at large residential or commercial buildings that are provided significant financial assistance by the city or leased by the city and or bought from the city. This bill simply expands the type of buildings that would be provided, that would be covered by the prevailing wage laws. And it's estimated that it will provide an additional $22 million in economic benefit for the city as a whole, and put tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into the hands and pockets of ordinary Philadelphians. So I want to thank, Madam Chair, I want to thank my colleagues on this committee, and especially my co-sponsors, who are trying to ask these questions about how we push forward on issues of poverty and income inequality in the city, and I look forward to this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gim, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. Let me state before we formally get started in hearing our testimony from our first panel that I want you, if you can, to go back and Google the story. And I want you to read the headline, because it was very appropriate. And this is what Councilwoman Gim just referenced. It was called "Surprisingly Good Economic News for Most of the Philly region." And while those who may have read the article think that the headline may have sounded a little rosy, the devil was in the details. So when you listen to Councilwoman Gim talked about those whose income is $100,000 and above sort of seeing a rise, the increase is in the number of Philadelphians who are at the bottom of the totem pole, right? So our security officers and our janitors and our home health aid workers, which is one of the largest growing sectors in our region due to our aging population. So, Councilwoman, what you've done is put council in a position where we will be able to take some action in helping to do what I often refer to as closing the gap between the haves and the have-nots. So thank you for your leadership. Let me just ask the clerk to now read the title of the bill being considered today.
An ordinance amending Section 17-107 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Contractors, Labor Management Relationships to provide that building service employees performing labor under certain building service contracts receive the prevailing wage and prevailing working conditions, and to provide for certain exemptions or exclusions, all under certain terms and conditions.
Will the clerk also call the first panel to testify on this bill?
Richard Laser, Deputy Mayor for Labor.
Deputy Mayor, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. I was about to say you look a little lonely today, but at least you brought some company.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Parker, Councilwoman Gimm, members of the Committee on Labor and Civil Service. My name is Richard Laser, and I am the Deputy Mayor for Labor. I want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to testify on Bill number 160713. I would like to begin by thanking Councilwoman Gimm for introducing this legislation. Bill number 160713 will amend the language of Section 17-107 of the Philadelphia Code, Contractors, Labor Management Relationships, to require a higher standard for employee wages and benefits to be paid to building service employees who work at certain properties leased out by the city or city-related agencies, the benefit from the city's financial assistance, or that were sold by the city within the past 10 years. More specifically, these provisions of Section 17-107 currently apply where the city property contains or will contain a commercial office building of at least 25,000 square feet or a residential building of at least 25 dwelling units, whether owned or rented by the occupants thereof. Leases shall be deemed to include subleases, including tenant leases. This bill would expand those criteria to include commercial offices, hospitals, universities, stadiums, convention centers, airports, and ports configured either on as one building or as a complex of buildings of at least 50,000 square feet, residential buildings or a complex of residential buildings of at least 50 dwelling units, and the special service districts of any size. The administration supports this bill and believes that workers are entitled to better wages. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you for your testimony. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Gimm.
I didn't actually have any comments. I just wanted to say thank you, Deputy Mayor. I know that the mayor was the original author of the bill that permitted this to be established for commercial office buildings, and it's wonderful to see as the mayor, as we transition into his administration, that he continues to push hard and fight for all workers in the city, and that his support of this bill means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Sanchez.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilwoman Gimm and Councilwoman Parker, for this. Can you, Deputy Mayor Laser, speak to why closing these loopholes are so important to the mayor?
It's definitely important to the mayor. This is a big issue for us. And I think the councilwoman or the chairwoman had explained it in the beginning. I think it's important to close that gap. We believe that when we increase wages for workers, it increases their quality of life, increases their family's quality of life, and that's very important to us. The mayor, it was a big priority of his to close any income gaps that we could, and we believe that this bill will help do that and move folks in the right direction with increased wages.
In the past, we've had to do several pieces of legislation, and we've had some pushback from the law department about our ability to be overreaching in the private sector. And so do you feel, and does the law department feel pretty strongly that we can defend and protect this? Because that's been always the issue. One is the law, and the other is the implementation. So are we going to get the type of support?
You're definitely going to get the support from my office and with the labor standards, and us supporting this bill. We go through the proper channels, and us supporting it, I hope, shows that we will defend it when possible. And I think because of the city assistance, it's important because we are giving some assistance, whether it's a service contract, leases, or some type of financial assistance. So there is a give. We're trying to make sure that if we're helping out or we're doing something to improve a project, that we also take care of the employees, that they're also feeling the benefits as well.
I'm glad to hear that. I also want to make sure one of the challenges we've faced in the past is when people begin to subcontract and try to find loopholes. So we also want to make sure, again, in the enforcement components of this, because unfortunately they have high-powered attorneys and they figure out the loopholes that we're committed to the enforcement component of.
Yeah, we're definitely committed to that. I think like labor standards, does that now on construction projects with prevailing wage, and we're going to move forward and do that in this process and use the same means necessary that we do with construction projects. We're going to do that here.
Thank you. Thank you,
Councilwoman Sanchez, and I don't mean to embarrass you when I say this, but I want to say that's the importance of history. When you just reference those loopholes, you reference the legal opposition and some of the challenges that the city has actually been faced with in the past in dealing with this issue. That's the value that staying power has. So thank you for your contribution, Councilman ONeill.
Yes, Mr. Laser's testimony really summarizes this bill very well. It's probably been sent through the email, but we have a package with everything, and that's not in it. Could we all get a quick copy of that?
And I'm going to pass you mine immediately, just so you'll have it.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We greatly appreciate you being here. Will the clerk please call the second panel?
Gabe Morgan, Ronda Whitmore, and Jean DuVal.
Thank you. Just please identify your name, the organization that you're representing for the record before you begin proceeding with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Jean DuVal from 32BJ. I'm a loving father, a security officer, and a proud member of 32BJ SEIU. I'm a native Philadelphian and I live in Frankfurt in Councilwoman Sanchez's district. I work in North Philly. I face many challenges when I go to and from work. I live in and travel in high crime areas. I put my life on the line every day, on and off the job. I'm on the front line. When there's an emergency, I'm one of the first to respond. For the work I do, I often find myself struggling financially. Passing the prevailing wage will be a small step to financial stability for me and nearly 2,500 security officers in Philadelphia. The cost of living keeps going up in Philadelphia and across the country. The cost of food, rent, transportation, and everything else is going up, but our wages haven't moved much. With the constant rise of the cost of living, our purchasing power decreases. If we get a raise, we can better support our families and spend that money in our communities and help them improve them. It's hard to give back to the community when you're living in poverty. The average officer now earns between $10 and $12 an hour. Asking for the prevailing wage isn't much. We just want to be able to live, provide for ourselves and our families. As I mentioned, I'm a devoted father to a young son, and every day it seems like he needs new clothes and new shoes because he's growing. He has a lot of other needs like for school and other activities. As he gets older, he'll need more. As a parent, it's hard to look my son in the face and not be able to provide all his needs all at once. It hurts as a man and a father because I'm providing for him. I'm doing the best I can, but I need to be met halfway. $15 an hour will help me do that. What I make now can get me by so I can provide, but it won't work in the long run. Making $15 an hour is for our future, for my son, our fellow security officers, and I. We all need a financial boost. Many of my coworkers work 2 and 3 jobs, and some are on assistance. We don't want handouts. We just want to be self-sufficient and stand on our own 2 feet. $15 an hour can help us do that. It's a good start for those starting work and transform the security industry for the better. The security industry has a high turnover rate due to low wages, which impacts the professionalism of the job that I love to do, so the turnover impacts the product. $15 an hour raises the standard of the industry and an individual's quality of life. Fighting for the prevailing wage is not just for me, it's for other officers and others in the service industry. I'm fighting for the voiceless. I consider this a privilege to be able to use this platform to fight for others now and in the future to help them better themselves. Please pass this bill out of committee with suspended rules. Thank you and good day.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here. My name is Ronda Whitmore. I want to thank the people that I'm looking in front of. Just thank you. I'm a native of Philadelphia. I am a native of Philadelphia. I live in North Philly, around Temple area. I'm a single mother of a precious 3-year-old little girl. I have been working security over across the city at various campuses here in Philadelphia for the past 5 years. Every day I see my community changing. There are new buildings and new businesses that make this area look better, but if you peel away the surface, the reality, things haven't changed for the people like me and my neighbors who are born and raised here in North Philadelphia. Wow, with new businesses and neighborhoods, the neighborhood looks nice, but for me, I can't afford it. My neighbors can't afford it. It became too costly to live here in North Philly. And amending to the prevailing wage to cover publicly subsidized universities and cities and hospitals is a step forward in the right direction. I'm thankful to be here and the city councilman to introducing this amendment and wanting to help the Constitution to do better. Me as a mother, we as mothers, fathers, and daughters and sons who want to be a part of the growth that's taking place in our neighborhood, in our city. We don't want to be pushed out. That's what's happening, though. We just can't afford it. I read this week that my neighborhood college Temple was built primarily to serve the community. I am the community. The professor that I had worked with, that I worked in the building, had stopped me, and I had shared my aspiration of taking classes. Right now, it's just a dream. You know, it's just a dream. I already don't need to read from a paper, but it really is just a dream because I have a lot of strong, passion that, you know, can give back and be who you are or be do part of the job that you do today. But I am the, you know, it's real, you know. So today I'm here to say right now I can only dream of taking classes that I can't afford. Imagine if you go back to school and I can better myself, you know, but it also inspire my neighbors and their children to do the same too. But we need to take action and be able to afford it. And that will be helped by you guys. As a community, we can't afford school. We want to be better, but we are not being paid a significant wage. My community is made up of hardworking men and women, and we are prevailing wages to uplift ourselves, our family, and our communities. We need the prevailing wage so we can amend and maintain our homes and families so we can stay together. As living wages helps to sustain family, I live with my parents. There are 8 of us in our home. My dad has 23 years of experience of security, and my mom has 10 years as an officer. My sister just got a job, and she's 19, and she's really happy. So she's like super, super happy. And I'm happy for her because she's young, and she's getting the idealistic of what it takes to be a young, independent black woman here in America. And I'm glad I could give her that understanding of being the only strong-minded person in my household out of 4 girls that my mom have, to be here and, you know, put myself on the line with a voice and a face to say, hey, we can do better if we show up, you know. So she just got her job, and we love our job. We love doing security. We love the students that, you know, your children or the children that come across the city. We learn from them. We network with them. We help them even when they're crying and their tears, and when things didn't go right in their day. We are the ones that's there telling them it's going to be all right. See you tomorrow, and good evening. Have a good night. There are good jobs, but, you know, they can be better. And the prevailing wage will be a magnificent change in it. We live, like me and my family, we live and we struggle together working to make ends meet, but it's still not enough. We rob Peter to pay Paul every paycheck to paycheck every week and every 2 weeks, however that balances itself out. As a security officer who works on the various campus of the various college campuses for 2 months out of every year, I have to go on unemployment, unfortunately. Enrollment is low, and I don't have the hours to work it. When September comes around, I struggle to provide for my little girl the things that she needs for school. I don't want to rely on assistance. I don't want to work. I want to work. I want to work and by the sweat of my own brow, not no one else. I want to be self-sufficient, but I need the prevailing wage to make that happen. My story is one of many. You can ask any security officer here that's with me in any community. The story won't be much different. We put our lives on the line every day for others. We never know what's going to happen the next day or what's happening the next moment of our day. Many of us work 2 or 3 jobs and sacrifice precious times with our children to raise, but we have to work because we have to provide a roof over their head and the things that make you responsible of being a parent, because that's a role that you can never take away. And that's why today I'm here to say that, you know, we protect your children, we protect your hospitals, we protect, you know, everything in the backyard that make money in there. You know, we protecting it because we feel as though we're honored to understand that we will never want to see another 9/11 again. And we don't never want to be less uneducated on what it takes to be an officer for these buildings, that if we have to do what we got to do, we want to do it the best way possible. You understand what I'm saying? The applause could this sounds good, but you know, the motion and the drain when Martin Luther King made his statement, you know, coming true would just be able just to see it. And I don't want to be gone and get my life taken doing security without seeing it. You know, that really matters because people die every day. And I could be the next person, as if today I was standing here talking in front of you. That's what I mean, our energy of saying we're on the front line, you know. We all want to live and take care of our loved ones. And like I said, I just appreciate that this is the right direction for everyone to understand that we need a change in America. We need a change in Philadelphia. And I sincerely ask you to please pass this bill out of the committee with suspense and rules. Thank you.
Madam Chair, my name is Gabe Morgan, and I'm the Vice President and Pennsylvania Director of 32 BJ. We are the largest union in Philadelphia, and we are the largest property service union in the East Coast. We represent 15,000 members who live and work in Philadelphia, 165,000 members who live and work up and down the Eastern Seaboard. These are the folks who clean, protect, and maintain all of the major buildings across this city, all of the major buildings across every major city in the East Coast. And I'm here to offer testimony in support of this bill. So I'm going to give a little bit of history to the bill, but then I'm going to try and spend most of my time on what the impact would actually be. Since the 1950s, the city of Philadelphia has had a prevailing wage law for construction workers. The law says that any corporation or nonprofit that gets a subsidy from either the city or a city-related agency must pay the going rate for wages and benefits to all construction workers they hire. These subsidies include city service contracts, leases, financial assistance. In 2008, that prevailing wage law was amended to apply to building service workers. This includes janitors, security guards, building engineers at commercial office and residential buildings. That has been the law since 2008. The law works as simply as if you receive a subsidy and you own a large commercial office or residential building, it applies to you. If you don't receive a subsidy, it does not apply to you. There are a number of problems, though, that have kept this law from meeting its original purpose. And really, I could summarize that problem by saying it left the largest recipients of public subsidy out. It left out the universities, the hospitals, the stadiums, the ports, the folks who actually received $2.8 billion in public subsidy over the past 8 years were cut out of the legislation. What our legislation would do is simply amend the existing law. It doesn't change what prevailing wage is. It doesn't change the way it's calculated. It doesn't change who it applies to. It would simply expand it to include big buildings, buildings 50,000 square feet or greater, that employ janitors, security officers, and building engineers, and require them to pay the prevailing wage in return for their public subsidy. That basic premise has a long history of working well. In fact, there are generations of thousands and thousands of building and construction workers whose livelihoods has been grounded in the existing wage, not just in Philadelphia, but in every major city and most states all across the United States of America. It has a long track record as a public policy of creating good jobs. There's no reason why that same policy shouldn't be extended to workers like these. Property service workers like security officers who stand in front of and protect the biggest, wealthiest, most publicly subsidized buildings in the city. And the impact it would make on a property service worker, on a security officer, is dramatic. As an example, right now, the average pay for a security officer at Temple is $11.48 an hour. Many, if not most, of the people who do that work are folks who actually live in the neighborhood in and around Temple. And as Temple has grown, as it's developed, are actually being gentrified out of their own neighborhoods while they see themselves earning poverty wages. If prevailing wage were applied in the past, the subsidies that Temple has got from the city, and the prevailing rate law was passed now, the average rate for a Temple security officer would be $16 an hour, which would make a huge difference in that individual worker's life. The difference between 11 and 48 and 16 is the difference between being working poor and being working class. And the idea that if you're receiving a public subsidy, you should ensure that the people that you are putting to work make a decent living in some quantifiable way, to us not only seems fair, but seems like a public policy model that is actually a long track record of working in other industries. So, you know, you guys have the legislation in front of you. We've plenty of facts, be happy to answer questions, but I just want to talk in a different way about the impact this would mean. There are 2,500 security officers in the city of Philadelphia. Almost all of those folks live in Philadelphia. Almost all of them live in some of the poorest communities in Philadelphia, and almost all of them are taking care of the richest people's stuff in Philadelphia. And well over 60% of those people have actually asked for and gotten a handout from the city in some way, shape, or form. Requiring that those folks, in return for getting a subsidy from the city, are going to lift these workers out of poverty only makes good sense. Otherwise, what are you giving people money for in the first place? Many of these institutions, UPenn, for example, is the wealthiest institution of its kind in the world. They have more money than most of the nations in the world. Simply requiring that if they're asking you to do something, they're going to create several hundred good jobs for people who live in West Philadelphia, to us seems like good public policy. That's really what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to look at an industry and say, we have the potential here to use public money to create good jobs for people who live in the city. We have the potential here to make sure that as economic development happens in Philadelphia, we can at least require that some people get a good job out of it. As you look around and see the cranes, the skyscrapers, all of the money that's going into the city, you guys know better than me, because you have so many of my members live in your districts, that they are often not getting a piece of that wealth that's being generated. Don't get me wrong. There are, in fact, building owners many in the city, including Councilman Dom, who actually, without asking for anything from the city, go ahead and make sure that the property service workers they have in their buildings are making a decent wage, can take their kids to the doctor. And in fact, that's actually the norm amongst the people who are not getting public subsidies from the city. The majority of the large commercial office building owners, for example, downtown, already pay for their janitors and their building engineers whatever the prevailing rate would be. Security officers are the ones who've been left behind in that market. And so prevailing rate is really where you're saying we have a base of good property service jobs, which in total between the three industries is something like 10,000 workers. We're going to try and make sure, because so many of our folks are working for folks who aren't getting any public handouts at all or making a decent living, that if you come and ask us for money, you're going to uphold those standards. And we're going to make sure that those folks, the hospitals, the universities, the stadiums, the ports, the ones who get the most money from the city in the first place, are upholding those standards. And the difference it'll make is you will lift thousands of people out of poverty. And if that's not good public policy, if that's not good economic development, then what is? So I'm happy to take any questions people have about the legislation and appreciate your time.
Chair recognize Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And good afternoon, thanks.
How you doing?
Thanks for the nice shout out, by the way.
Of course.
I have two one's a question, one's a statement.
All right.
I wanted to make sure I understood the chart that was handed out to us. And it says in here the wages currently are $11.48, use the Temple example, and they're going to $13.48. And the benefits are $227, they're going to $427. And I was just trying to understand, the wages were going up 17.5, but the benefits are going up 88%. Is there any way that, is there a reason why the money's not going to the people working versus the benefits?
So one, under the law, that it's two things. That rate is based on the Federal Service Contract Act. So they set those rates, not us. But under the law, and that's what you look at when you're calculating the prevailing wage. Either you look at the Federal Service Contract Act or you look at the largest governing collective bargaining agreement, and then whichever is greater. The Federal Service Contract Act has a number earmarked for health and a number earmarked for wage. You decided, but if you're able to get the health with the number, then whatever's left over that goes on a worker's check. So, for example, a 32BJ member in security is able to get health insurance for about $2.60 an hour. That would mean the remainder of that would actually go on to the check in that situation. Someone who's non-union, because this law does not specify union or non-union, it's just simply a standard, right? Someone who's non-union, that might be calculated differently, but it is true that almost all of the places that are in this legislation, we do represent probably 90% of the people in the place.
Okay. I mean, just percentage-wise, the benefits are going up 88%, and the salary was going up 17%.
The federal government, man, you know how that is.
Okay. The second thing I wanted to mention, it's not a question, but just a statement. I want to make sure that we really get the word out about the earned income tax credit. This is so valuable because last year, $100 million was left on the table in Philadelphia that could have gone to 40,000 families who qualify. And to give you some example, just using the $17 an hour, 40-hour week, comes out to about $33,000 of income. The chart for EITC, from my recollection, is that a single parent with two kids, $44,000 of income, married, $49,000, two kids, can get checks up to $5,000 and file back for 3 years. It's huge money.
Wow.
And the more we can do to get that money into the hands of Philadelphians, we left $100 million in Washington. It should be here. It should be for the 40,000 people that qualify. So whatever you can do to help us get that money out, I would greatly, and I know my council colleagues would greatly appreciate, and so would the mayor. So thank you.
Well, I'm sure that I speak for all the 32BJ members in the room here who would like to get back whatever they're owed in their taxes, that we'd be happy to work with you on that effort in any way that we can.
It's the earned income tax credit.
And thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman ONeill.
Yes, thank you for your testimony. And Councilman Dom raised the question. I was looking at it from a different perspective, but getting to the same place, that we're even further behind by quite a bit on the benefits than we are on the wages. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a larger jump to go. But I appreciate your statement that it all washes out in favor of the employee, whether they're they get it on one or the other.
Right.
So it was helpful, and thank you.
Absolutely.
And the earned income tax credit, I'm telling you, that's an incredible number. The Revenue Department just moved an office into my district that deals just with revenue questions, revenue payments. And the one thing they told me was that, and I wasn't aware of it, was that during tax season, they actually contract with a nonprofit and give them space in their office to help people fill out that return. And if you don't owe a penny in tax and you qualify for that, you get a check from the federal government for the amount stated by Mr. Dom. And when it can add up to $100 million that quickly, and we know the income level of the people that would benefit from it, it's instead of paying your taxes, you're getting taxes that you didn't owe, but you were entitled to get from the federal government. It's not even a tax, really, because it's just a credit. The check recognizing your situation is pretty tough. That we've got to figure out a way to crack it. And I've got a T-shirt with more language on it than Councilman Don provided them. It reads. I saw a guy on the beach a couple weeks back, and he had so many tattoos, and they were all printed out on his back and arms. And I said, he's written the book on tattoos. He actually wrote a book on himself in a tattoo. But that shirt is almost, there's that much information, and it's clear. I've seen Councilman Dom speak in public about it. Just driving home, and it doesn't matter what neighborhood you're in, that is citywide. And somehow, if the Revenue Department is involved with outreach, that's not typically their area of business, is helping people get money from the federal government. We've got to find a way to, working together, public-private partnership, whatever, to get more people, almost identify them as you do when somebody's not registered to vote. Except this is, we know they're filing their taxes. They're not filing the form that's going to be the best check they may have ever seen. And 3 times, you can go back 3 years, 15 grand?
Sure.
That's a lot of money in that situation.
Well, again, our union would love to work with one or both of you to figure out how to help our members access that. And I assure you that sometimes our members feel like they're the only people who are paying taxes. And a lot of times, and more germane to this, that's sort of the point, right? I mean, working people in the city are paying taxes. Security officers are paying taxes. Janitors are paying taxes. Engineers are paying taxes. Many working people are paying taxes. But most of the entities that this legislation would apply to are not only not paying taxes, they're asking you to give them taxes. Right. And we're asking you in return to demand good jobs.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to just say a few words for the record. I want to thank SEIU for your creative leadership in trying to grow the wages of people that work in the city of Philadelphia. I was just actually coming back from Greenville, North Carolina over the weekend from taking my parents down to North Carolina. And as I was getting off the plane, there was 2 young ladies who were actually cleaning the plane. And it made me reflect on the hearings we've had in City Council regarding the challenging conditions that some of your members had in regards to cleaning planes. And it makes me think of the work that SEIU has done not only for their members, but for people that work in similar jobs all around the city of Philadelphia, who are not just your members, but are working in similar type of jobs, and the work that you've done to help to raise their salaries, I think, has an impact not just for your members, but throughout the city. Because when you think about the city of Philadelphia having the highest poverty rate that we have in any large city, I often talk about how we need to increase the number of successful small businesses, but we also need to find a way to increase the salaries for the workforce, not just for SEIU members, but for all people that work in the city of Philadelphia. I think SEIU, through your work over the past number of years, have really shown leadership in that regard, not only for your members, but for people throughout the city of Philadelphia. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Gill.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Chair. And I just really had to say thank you to this panel, and especially to all the members of SEIU who came out today to talk about what it means to fight poverty in not just the city, but in America. I want to thank especially the 2 members who spoke up to testify, how much it means to be able to share your stories, to put a face To know that, I mean, especially yourself as a young woman, you are a sister, you are a daughter, you're a mother. You spoke from the heart, but you also spoke for a lot of us who understand this so deeply. So we were very moved by all your testimony. I'm personally moved by all the membership who came out today. The honest and hard fact is that pushing forward on these issues requires an enormous push at the base. Change will not happen voluntarily from the top. For years, as Gabe said so eloquently, we are giving away billions at this point in tax subsidies to entities that have to be told to pay a living wage. And we have to define that, and we have to continue to push on it. We have to continue to raise the bar. We have to do it for ourselves, but we also have to do it for others and those who follow. And I want to thank 32BJ for being the conscience of the city, for pushing on this, for holding us accountable, and hopefully to seeing some real change. So thank you.
Councilman Brown.
I just want to thank also Councilman ONeill for pushing EITC, and I wanted to offer an idea that I'd be happy to help you do this. On your website, we should put an earned income tax credit calculator where the people who are the members of the union can go in, put their information in, and find out exactly whether they qualify and what the dollars would be. And this way they can get the check.
Great idea.
Okay?
Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee for this panel anymore? With that being said, thank you so very much.
Can I say one? I just want to thank
Yes.
you and Councilwoman Gim and Maria, always Maria, for standing up for the members of SA 32BJ, sponsoring this legislation, and we appreciate the support and the comments and the ideas that folks have to try and lift people like our members out of poverty. I want to say thank you to all of you.
With that being said, is there anyone else to testify on this bill? Anyone else here who wants to testify on this bill? Okay, this concludes the public hearing. We will now go into a public meeting to consider the action to be taken on the bill that we just heard today. Right, and so we're going to amend the bill. Okay. So wait, the chair recognizes. Okay, chair recognizes Councilmember Gim for a motion on the amendments to Bill number 160713.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I offer an amendment to Bill number 160713. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of this committee. I move that the amendment to Bill number 160713 be approved.
Second. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to Bill number 160713 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries, and the amendment. Just for a moment, we want to let you know that we are happy, and this moment was pregnant with possibilities. But you jumped up to clap before the baby came, right? So just hold it for a second. The chair recognizes Councilmember Gim for a motion on Bill number 160713 as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill number 160713, as amended, now be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit a first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
It has been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 160713, as amended, be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Bill number 160713, as amended, will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, with a request that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading at the next session of council. Thank you, and this concludes the meeting and business of the City Council